for New York.
Welcome to this week's edition of New York Now. I'm Dan Clark. We're going to spend a lot of this week's edition talking about education and how the state schools have been impacted by COVID-19. But first, there was some action right here in the state capitol this week. The state legislature made a surprise return trip back to Albany, while Governor Cuomo went all the way down to Washington, D.C. to meet with President Trump. Joining me to talk about all of this is Joe Spector from the USA Today Network. Joe, thanks for making a return appearance to New York Now.
I'm making a return appearance just like the state legislature made a return appearance to the Capitol this week, Dan.
Exactly, you're making your comeback. So let's talk about the state legislature, because they came back and they passed a whole package of bills related to COVID-19. They didn't come back on routine business. They didn't come back, to do their normal things. They came back specifically to pass a number of bills that relate to the disease and helping people with certain things in their view. Joe, give me some of the highlights that we have here. I know we looked at things like the Child Victims Act, maybe some rent relief, things like that. So give me what you noticed.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me. The state legislature hadn't been in Albany since April 3rd. That's when they finished passing the state budget. And this is their first return since then, more than 2 months. And, the reason is, COVID-19, as you noted. They left Albany. They've held several public hearings since they left in April. But this was the first time in person. Now, not everybody was in Albany. A lot of them voted remotely. But there were a good number of lawmakers, at least some, who came up to Albany. A lot of them were wearing masks. Legislative chamber, which was something new for sure, sort of a sign of the times. But their goal was to pass a series of packages that dealt with COVID-19, or even deal with issues that dealt with things that they needed to do so people had time because of coronavirus to get passed. So, for example, the Child Victims Act, that was set to expire in August. That allows people who were victims of sexual abuse to come forward and file lawsuits against their abusers. That was set to expire in August. Governor Cuomo, by executive order, extended that to January. And what the lawmakers did was now extend that to through the summer of 2021. So a full year extension on that. There's been a lot of price gouging as it pertains to products and other things due to coronavirus. Lawmakers passed a package of bills that would deal with price gouging, so retailers and wholesalers couldn't inflate the prices of equipment and goods and cleaning supplies. They also took it was sort of one didn't really know about, many people didn't know about, but masks fall under the loitering law in New York. So if you're wearing a mask, as you should if you're out in public, there was laws that made that loitering. And so to clarify that you couldn't be arrested or charged or given a ticket for wearing a mask under that loitering law, they made it clear that due to the coronavirus, you're clearly able to wear a mask without any harassment or any questions from the police. So those were a few of the ones that they did. And the larger issue still remains. Will the legislature take any steps to deal with the state's fiscal problems? And so far, they haven't. State faces like a $13 billion deficit due to coronavirus and a lack of state revenue. So they have to deal with that at some point. But that's not something that looks like they're going to do in the near term.
So what can they do? I mean, the governor, we see him asking for federal money to fill the state's budget gaps. Does the legislature have any power to create revenue in this time? I know there's a lot of talk about, not among lawmakers, but among advocates, about a even higher millionaires tax, but I don't know what else they're looking at. Are we hearing anything?
Well, they certainly could do that if they wanted to have a millionaire's tax. But at this point, there's no attempts to do that from a legislative standpoint. It's not something the governor has seemed receptive to, so that makes it difficult to move forward. But that's one avenue. New York City is looking for the state to give them a loan to let them so they could to foot them some money, billions of dollars, so they can get themselves through their own fiscal challenges. And Governor Cuomo on Thursday said he has a hard time or has concerns about loaning New York City money for their operating deficits, figuring that that's like a one shot and how do you pay that back? So that's one that's on the table as well. And then overall, the state with its budget deficit is awaiting, as you said, federal money from the federal government. aid through a new stimulus package. And, you mentioned Governor Cuomo was in Washington on Wednesday to try to continue to push for the federal government, Congress. He met with President Trump to try to get a package that would help states and local governments. And so if and when that comes, that might be something for the legislature to have to address as well.
Yeah, definitely something to watch in the coming days. A really important conversation had between the governor and Congress. Joe Spector from the USA Today Network, thanks so much for starting the show this week on New York Now.
Thanks so much, Dan.